It's 2008. You've been playing Bethesda's new release Fallout 3, making some questionable choices. You glance at the clock, it's late and you have school in the morning, but you tell yourself just one more building. Little did you know that this building held the darkest secret in all of Fallout. Immediately upon entering, this building feels different. Sure, most of the Wasteland buildings are empty or filled with danger, but this one just feels different. As you descend through the decrepit halls, you hear footsteps behind you, but every time you turn around, you're on your own. Doors begin opening on their own in front of you and you start to see things. Visions of the past, maybe? You slowly descend into the depths. Something keeps compelling you onwards. This place is like nothing else you've seen so far. And down there, in the dark, you find an obelisk to a dark god. That was the Dunwich building, a place that stuck out by how odd it was in Fallout 3. And our first introduction to qualtoth. But not our last. So get comfy, grab your Mothman safety blanket and settle in. This will be a long one. When you first enter the Dunwich building, you can find a stack of holotapes on a nearby table, logging how Jamie tracked his father to this building. His father had bought a book from an expedition and travelled to the capital Wasteland to sell it to the Brotherhood of Steel. When they didn't want it though, he became obsessed with the book and with taking it back to the source, and he just left his son behind.
Out here. Dad's been a little nuts for some time now, but not like this. Leaving me in that crappy old hospital without waking me.
Jamie tracked him across the Wasteland and believed that this building, Dunwich, was where his dad had ended up. This may even strike a chord with the Lone Wanderer, because it's the same reason you left the vault. You were trying to find your dad. Locals told Jamie to avoid this place, as strange things go on inside. A warning that the Lone Wanderer can also receive if they ask locals about this place. But Jamie had to find his dad.
God help me. I found Dad today. I didn't think it was him, but... face. The zombies didn't touch him. I think he was becoming like them. Didn't know it was him until I found that old book near him. No more killing. I just need to go. Can't forget the book. All I have left of him. It's warm against the stone. I'll just rest a while.
The building is full of ghouls, and when he finally found his dad, he'd already turned into a feral ghoul, only recognizable by the damn book laying near him. Jamie picks up the book, and as he descends, he slowly begins to change as well. Something calls to him from the depths, and as he descends, he slowly loses his mind. Just listen.
Sharp knife. Sharp knife to send him to Deep Temple. Flay and say my words. Abdul comes again on the Feast of the Weaker. Feast for the Deep Temple. Born again. Here. Al-Hazared. Yes. Yes.
We can find the sole surviving computer in this place as we follow in his footsteps. It was set up to record meetings, keep minutes, and it's kept its vigil over these long years. It caught the bombs dropping and it managed to capture more of Jamie's transformation. What the hell was that? Doesn't matter. Where is it? Where? Safe and sound. Jesus, they bled so much, but I kept it clean. Shit, more. Got to move, got to keep it safe. I came, qualtoth. Back this time, deep temples. Screaming, twisting. No light, no flesh. Deep temple born, deep temple died. qualtoth again. Returned. Retribution. We eventually find Jamie in the depths of the building. He and several ferals are worshipping an ancient and strange obelisk. The obelisk has a body emerging from one side and several skulls embedded on the other. It does give off radiation, but barely a radisecond. Certainly not enough to explain all the ghouls or how fast Jamie turned. If you listen close, even once everyone else is dead, you can still hear whispers coming from the obelisk. Listen. Now, some of the names we've come past are direct relations to Lovecraft's writing. The building itself is named after the Dunwich Horror, a novella about what happens when a human and an eldritch entity, through dark magic and corrupted rituals, kind of get it on and conceive children to create a gateway into our reality. Wilbur Whately, the child conceived, became less and less human as he grew, and the other one was, well, incomprehensible to human sensibilities. This story was a favourite of Bethesda, and we'll revisit it later on. Now, Al-Hazred is the prophet Abdul Al-Hazred, the author of the Necronomicon, and the repeated Gief is most likely a homage to R'lyeh, the underwater tomb where Cthulhu lies sleeping, or the Deep Temple, as the holotape puts it. And back at Fallout 3's launch, that would have been the end of it. No climactic ending, no follow-up, just a very memorable location for how creepy and out of place it was. Then in June 2009, things changed with the Point Lookout DLC. Along with the main questline, which involved siding with one pre-war relic or another, was another much darker questline, and the Swamp Folk. Now, before the war, Constance Blackhall, who was sister to Richard Dunwich, the owner of Dunwich Borers and the headquarters we found the obelisk below, was as obsessed with the occult as her brother. And during her time of collecting occult items, she discovered the Kryvekna, a book of dark, ancient secrets connected to qualtoth. Now, Constance used the secrets within to secure her power and control of the region, even after the bombs dropped, long past any normal mortal lifespan, without having to resort to becoming a brain in a jar or ghoulification like the other pre-war fossils on this island. At some point, the book was stolen from her, resulting in her death and the dissolution of the cult she had brought together, resulting in the fall of the Blackhall House. The book was passed between people until somehow it ended up in the hands of Jamie's father. How it was once again stolen from them and ended up in the hands of the Swamp Folk is completely unknown. And now, in the year 2277, as the Lone Wanderer finds the Blackhall estate in shambles, a lone descendant is waiting. Obadiah is wheelchair-bound when you find him, and he invites you to talk for a while, asking you to find him a family relic that the Swamp Folk have stolen, the Kryvekna. Seems the Swamp Folk worship it somewhere in the swamps, and he wants it back. Upon accepting the quest and leaving the estate, you're approached by Marcella, who claims that the book is evil, and in no way should we return it to Obadiah. Marcella doesn't have any caps for us, but she'll share some of her meds with us if we bring the book to her instead. When we find the Swamp Folk hideout, it's in the ruins of what was once a building. Down in the basement, we find ancient marble ruins from some long-lost civilization, now defiled, covered in blood and gore from dark rituals that no sane man should ever witness. And yet, in the center of one of these rituals, we find the book. It looks like it was being used to worship and commit all of these heinous acts. After fighting our way out of a Swamp Folk ambush, we need to make a decision. Give the book to Obadiah or Marcella. Obadiah asked first, so let's go see him. Obadiah is thankful for his return in the book, and it seems to be a miracle worker, as if we stick around after giving him the book, he'll just get out of his wheelchair and walk away. We can then follow him down. He'll descend down into the basement where he has his own sacrificial altar, and we can actually catch him praying to qualtoth, stating that he's returned, and we should all be afraid. That obviously isn't ideal. So, if we instead head to Marcella's camp, we'll find it filled with mercenaries, most likely sent by Obadiah. And in the tent, we find Marcella's dead body. On the nearby computer are details on how to destroy the Kryvekna for once and for all.
They attacked while I slept. I don't expect to survive. I only pray that that you haven't taken that book to Obadiah. You must take up my mission. There is one way to utterly destroy the Kryvekna, but you must take a pilgrimage far north of Point Lookout in the capital wasteland. Seek a place called Dunwich. Within is an obelisk, itself a wicked thing. It'll consume the book. You need only press the book to its surface. May God shed his blessings upon you, child. Make haste for Dunwich. My God, I am sorry for all my sins with all my heart. In choosing to do wrong and failing to do good, I have sinned against you, whom I should.
It seems that the book and the obelisk are both of qualtoth and they call to each other, just like with Jamie and his father. But touching the book to the obelisk consumes it in fire and the Krydonis story is over. Next, we head to the Commonwealth. But before Fallout 4 takes place. Now, Fallout has a tabletop RPG that not many people are aware of, and there is an expansion called The Winter of Atom. Released on March 11th, 2023, this saw the players fighting against the last Son of Atom and his army of Atomites. Now, the last Son of Atom has been using his army to attack towns across the Commonwealth and create monstrosities such as the Gigapede, a tower-sized centipede, or the giant glowing one, which, honestly, the storyline could be worth a video all in itself. But today, we're looking at the last Son of Atom and the location we find him in. We find Adam Whately, the self-professed last Son of Atom, underneath the Whately Research Facility, which was run by his ancestor, General John Whately. Now, remember how I said the Dunwich Horror was a favourite of Bethesda's? These two are obviously named after the Whately family. And just like Old Man Whately in the book, John Whately collected esoteric artifacts and worshipped other things than the Christian god he pretended to worship. John Whately is even directly named in one of the Lovecraft books, caught talking to a dark creature, and it's not entirely clear if he is the same person as Old Man Whately, but either way, it's in the bloodline. The Whately Research Facility was built under a church, and upon entering it, the players will begin to have wild hallucinations, including seeing ghosts, similar to when we entered the Dunwich building earlier. On the way, the players will inevitably end up in the offices of General Whately himself, and while this does have an elevator down to progress, it's the desk and terminal we want to look at right now. Upon accessing the terminal, we're asked if we want to wake the dreamer. If we choose no, a distorted crying Vault Boy will appear on the screen. Upon choosing yes, though, we're subjected to a series of visions. A serpent devouring its own tail, the bombs falling and obliterating 13 significant landmarks, black-robed figures ritually sacrifice an elderly man, tree-sized tentacles writhe up around a star-shaped obsidian statue, and finally, at a nice, sunny family cookout, everyone is smiling and laughing far too much. There are still more secrets hidden in the room, though. Locked inside the dark walnut desk is the Magnum Nomicon, a gun incorporating many of the Whately family ideals, such as to not raise that which you cannot put down. A quote from Lovecraft's Case of Charles Dexter Ward. The gun is embellished with strange runes and tentacles, and the grip is bound in some strange leather, which, let's face it, is most likely human. The gun itself uses some kind of energy, and is able to reanimate dead enemies that it shoots. Even using regular ammo, it's all in the gun. We can then finally use the secret elevator in this room. The players descend even further below the hidden facility, and they find a mining tunnel filled with glowing crystals and obsidian roughly chipped away at by human hands. And at the end of the tunnel, it opens up into a cavern of incomprehensible sights. The floors and walls are littered with alien plant life that glows in the dim light. At the center, the player can see 3 huge obelisks that are similar in design to the ones we found in the Dunwich building. And beyond those, a gaping abyss that descends to unknown depths from which large tentacles emerge. The largest of which seem to protect the obsidian towers, but other, smaller tentacles spread through the area, feeling for intruders. And in the center of all of this is Adam Whately, the self-professed last Son of Atom, wearing power armor with some kind of glowing device sunk deep into it. We can talk to him before fighting, and he reveals a few interesting things. When he first heard of Atom, he began to have strange dreams of a city under the ground where Atom was contained. The dreams increased in intensity and began to hurt him, nearly killing him, until he set out to find the place and the pain subsided. Just like Wilbur Whately, Adam actually sees the tentacled abomination as his brother, the first Son of Atom. It whispered to him in his dreams and brought him here, even helping him to decipher the ancient glyphs on the obelisk so he could take out the glowing device, Atom's Glow as he calls it. When asked about the city, he claims it was the first great civilization, but they turned away from Atom's Glow and as such, they got exactly what they deserved. The players can then fight him, and even their own friends, if he manages to trap them in a mental realm using the power of Atom's glow. Upon defeating him, the Commonwealth is left to pick up the pieces after the attack, and all is well. That ancient city is still out there, and there is still something lurking in that pit. But now that we're in the area, let's investigate the Commonwealth in Fallout 4. We have other mysterious buried cities and cultists to dig into. In Fallout 4, we once again bump into the Dunwich family business. These guys get all over. Towards the top right of the map, near the Kingsport Lighthouse, another location named after Lovecraft's writing. So while there is a Kingsport in Tennessee, Lovecraft used the setting of Kingsport in Massachusetts as a setting for some of his stories. Dunwich Borers is full of raiders as we approach it, and as we descend into the mines we can hear the raiders whispering about something. At each checkpoint we find terminals for the pre-war overseer of that section. Each one has a health and safety notice, or kind of the opposite really. They didn't want to know about any unsafe conditions, and they didn't care about deaths among the workforce, even if it was children at the company potluck. Every death actually helped further their ideals as a sacrifice to their dark god, although obviously the workers didn't know about this. Each terminal also requests the overseer's presence further into the mine, so we'll need to descend further to see why they were being summoned down there. Terminal 3 is at the edge of a huge pit, and at the bottom we find Bedlam. So it seems all the raiders we've taken out up until now were from the Forged. They were sent here to scavenge the place, bring out any good loot, but something had them spooked and they wouldn't descend into the lower sections of the quarries, and so the deliveries had slowed to a crawl.
Tim Shoots here. No suspicions were raised when the new equipment was brought in the other day. Crew at Station 4 are still under the impression that we are setting up a new station beyond this area. The standing crew you hired are convincing enough. However, do worry about the project managers at the other stations, especially Bob at Station 1. We all know he takes his job very seriously. His bullet point updates bug the hell out of me. My gut tells me to figure out something's going on down here sooner rather than later. Please advise.
So, Bedlam was sent out here to whip them back into shape. Unfortunately, they were afraid for a reason, and Bedlam also saw something down there that terrified her, causing her to seek the light for protection. Past the door they changed for their own production, the rumbling became worse, almost like something is shifting in the earth. And just like at the Dunwich building, we're assaulted by ghouls and visions of the past. The rumbling in the earth intensifies as we descend further and further until we see a vision of an altar and a man, presumably Dunwich himself, sacrificing someone. As the vision fades, the altar is replaced by a deep, water-filled hole. If, for whatever reason, we dive into the hole, we can find the altar. On each side has a mini nuke, and in the center is Kremva's tooth, a unique machete that has a pretty unique look to it. That isn't all though. At the bottom of the pit is a giant face looking up at us, one that may look familiar. These statue heads can be found all over America, but why would one be in the depths of this mine? Buckle up, because the statues only get weirder from here. We'll get to what they mean later on once we've seen a few more of them. I also want to note that the heads just managing to poke out from the dirt at the bottom of this deep tunnel could also be a reference to the Shunned House by Lovecraft, where a man digs under an abandoned house and unearths the elbow of a giant monstrosity under the earth. Maybe there's a giant creature under the earth here and it's waking up is what's causing all the rumbling. Next, let's take a casual walk through Boston's North End, where we'll bump into raiders attacking a building. Upon entering, we'll find macabre sights, dismembered raiders, and disturbing paintings. And as we crawl through the walls and eventually into the sewers, we find Pickman, surrounded by raiders, and once we deal with them, he'll be very thankful we saved him. You see, he's been targeting raiders to create his art and clean up the streets. He's been putting out his calling card out there just to get people to come and get all these raiders here, but he bit off a bit more than he could chew. Now, in Fallout Shelter Online, a Chinese version of Fallout Shelter, Pickman will actually talk about how being close to Dunwich Borers and the whispering coming out of it influenced him to create his art and start killing raiders. Other than his disturbing art, which we'll come back to later, and his connection to Dunwich Borers, Pickman himself was a reference to the character of the same name in Lovecraft's work, primarily Pickman's model, where he paints those dark creatures that dwell in graveyards and the old places of the world. According to Fallout Online, he also has a connection with our next character of note. Now, upon entering a number of locations across the game, the sole survivor may be approached by Edward Keegan, who may have a job for us, but we need to meet his job first. Now, the Cabot family are still living like the war never happened. The house looks fairly pristine compared to the rest of Boston. And then we meet Jack Cabot, an odd man who is more interested in whether we believe in civilizations other than humanities that may have predated us than whether we actually can do a job. Now, Edward asks us to do several quests, such as recovering a mysterious serum for some raiders, and finding Jack's younger sister, who turns out to look much older than him for some reason. Then, in the secret of Cabot House, we find out about their father and the serum. You see, Lorenzo Cabot was an archaeologist who faced a lot of scorn for his theories that there was a civilization that predated humanity. But in the desert of Rub al-Khali, after many nights and losing some of his people to the desert, as well as a mysterious sandstorm that undid all of their work, Lorenzo eventually found the ruined city of Ubar. Deep in the depths, he found a burial chamber that contained non-human remains, tools that wouldn't fit human hands, and the crown. Lorenzo buried the ruins so no one else could find it and returned home with the crown to teach his family of his findings. When he began to wear the crown, though, knowledge beyond human understanding flooded his brain and his body changed. He no longer aged. He was stronger and gained some psychic abilities, like being able to control the raiders to make them attempt to save him. Despite the change and the violent crimes he was committing, his family used their influence to place him in the Parsons State Asylum rather than jail. The crown was incapable of being removed without greatly harming or even killing Lorenzo, so Jack has been studying it all these long years. At some point, Jack worked out how to create an anti-aging serum using his father's blood, and so the Cabot house has survived, even after the bombs fell. Finally, though, we'll have to decide whether to free Lorenzo to kill his family or to kill him ourselves. Now, the story is similar to two of Lovecraft's works. The Nameless City, where they find a city under the sand from a long-lost civilization, and The Shadow Out of Time, a book about body swappers, who swap bodies to experience different points in time, but obviously have very different personalities to the person they're inhabiting, which could explain the rapid change in Lorenzo's personality. Maybe he's already gone. In Fallout Shelter Online, Lorenzo talks about the whispers coming from Dunwich Borers, and that Pigman actually encouraged him to visit it, as it has something to do with the Rub al-Khali desert. Were the ruins down there another lost city? Maybe Dunwich just didn't dig far enough before the bombs dropped. Also, each hero has a card in Fallout Shelter Online, and Lorenzo's has him standing in front of one of the statue heads with its eyes glowing. Let's carry on and see where else they pop up before getting into the statues. Now, love it or hate it, November 2018, Bethesda released Fallout 76. And as the game has been updated, the mystery has only grown. So starting off with, Appalachia is well known for its cryptids and things that go bump in the night, but none more than the beloved fan favourite Mothman. Hailing from Point Pleasant, depending on how you view the Mothman, they either warn you of or cause deadly disasters. In Fallout, just like in real life, Mothman attracted paranormal investigators and conspiracy theorists from all over the world to visit. In the January issue of Cryptid Monthly, Julia H. Park stated their belief that the government was using Mothman to hypnotize doctors as part of whatever was going on at Sugar Grove. Given that the government was actively seeking the Mothman, and the fact we find one in an Enclave research site, the government was actually pretty successful in tracking them down. Maybe the conspiracy nuts were right. I mean, we do know Sugar Grove was being used for the Somnus Initiative and MK Ultra Parallel. Eventually, some of the locals began to worship the wise Mothman, the one with purple eyes. Not to be confused with the red-eyed Mothman, but we'll get into that soon. Now, they started a cult that would meet in the basement of the Point Pleasant Museum, and as the war began to escalate, the cult called out to Mothman for his wisdom. Only one person in the entire congregation, Brother Charles, saw anything. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a shadow and heard a whisper promising a flood and fire. So, the cultists took to the roofs of the town, and the flood came in the form of fire and nuclear fallout as the bombs dropped. Brother Charles then led the exodus to the Lucky Hole mine to save his people, although some people, like Jeff Lane, stayed behind. Around the same time that the cult was summoning the Mothman, a group led by a woman had begun to harass and creep out the security staff at Lucky Hole mine. to the point that the security staff actually asked the local asylum if they were missing any patients. As they weren't, and the place was shutting down anyway, the security quickly abandoned it and just kind of left it to this group of strangers. Now, when Brother Charles and his group arrived, the two groups just merged and began worshipping Mothman together. However, things didn't last. The worship began to become twisted. Rather than the wise Mothman, they began to deify the crimson-eyed Mothman and the interloper. Charles began to see this and saw how they were being turned away from the wise Mothman and explained as much, but not many would actually listen to him. Those that would, he led on an exodus across the wastelands to a place we only know as the Lantern, a beacon in the world for the wise Mothman to return to, and away from the dim ones and the chthonic entities they worship. Now, the dim ones, as Charles refers to them, began to be led by the first priestess of the wood, and the cult cared for the firstborn of the wood. The enlightened that Charles leads condemned this most of all, calling it a heretical action, worship of a pretender or the deceiver. Now, the enlightened ones return to Appalachia occasionally. They clear Point Pleasant and summon the wise Mothman in their sacred place atop the museum. And if we aid them, we can gain access to their sacred tomes, which explain all of this history. Now, Jeff Lane was a paranormal enthusiast who lived in Point Pleasant, but for some reason didn't follow the cult into the mine. He began to feel disillusioned after the bombs dropped. Mothman to him became just a biological creature. It was just like him, flesh and blood. But then there were these other things, unknowable beings on the edge of his subconscious mind that were more interesting to him. Eventually, Jeff met a mad storyteller, and he immediately became obsessed with their tales of the interloper who lurked deep beneath the earth. He left the town in search of this otherworldly force, and just like with Adam Whately, he began to be drawn to the Lucky Hole mine, where he believed he was to be chosen by the interloper as a conduit for the unknown. Now, Lucky Hole Mine is still filled with cultists to this day if we visit it, after the Wastelanders expansion, obviously. And deep inside, we can find the firstborn of the wood, or, as Jeff and the Enlightened referred to it, the interloper. A huge creature that seems to be at least part plant and is still living, as it slowly moves if we take our time to observe it. It will also bleed if you do attack it. There is obviously a likeness to Cthulhu here, with the tentacled face and things starting to sprout from its back that may one day become wings. Now, if we look around, the floor in this area is covered in bodies and jars. It looks like they were tending to the firstborn, and the way that they were doing this was through feeding it people. Maybe they were collecting their blood in the jars and using it as some kind of like fertilizer to feed the plant creature. While we've been in this room though, you may have noticed some familiar sights. Underneath the plants and animal skulls is another obelisk, and on the wall are several of the statue heads watching over the interloper as it grows. Now, to throw it back to, once again, the Dunwich horror, those creatures from outside our reality need a medium, or a conduit, to be able to affect our reality. Now, this bit is pure speculation, but we don't know what happened to Jeff. Maybe he arrived and began the transformation into the interloper, or maybe he was just pulled there to feed himself to it. The interloper isn't the only mysterious entity's body in Appalachia, though. In the deep, whether you get there through swimming or walking through a maze, we come across a, honestly, rather beautiful but pretty alien environment. The cave is bathed in soft pink and purple bioluminescence, and in the center lays something familiar but different. This creature resembles the interloper, but it's not moving and its body looks different. A different head, different protrusions. Maybe it just starved as no one found it to care for it. Or maybe the nearby Chinese outpost killed it by mining the ultrasite. The object ID for this creature is the Visitor Corpse 01. And hilariously, the one for the interloper is actually just called Gut Puker, which honestly, I just found it hilarious. Now, the cult of the interloper uses a lot of plant life in their effigies, twisting sticks and vines together to map their locations. Any place they move into tends to be covered in it, and the interloper itself is at least part plant. In fact, when doing the Mothman Equinox to clear out Point Pleasant, vine barricades will grow out of the ground to protect the braziers, to try and stop you from using them. Which brings us to our next location in Appalachia, Tanagra Town. Hidden deep in the marshlands of the map is a town that has been violently ripped out of the earth and into the sky, being held there by massive vines. It could be related to the strangler vines released from Vault 94 after its Gek exploded. But hidden in a chamber at the center is another one of those statue faces. The Enclave actually had a research station nearby as well to study the vines and the explosion before one of the scientists lost their mind. There was a terminal that actually got removed from the game that showed the plants worming their way into the minds of one of the research team. And while yes, that was removed from the game, we can actually still find a note about how they didn't want to hurt them, but they had no choice. The research needed to be destroyed. Maybe whatever was present under Tanagra Town took control of the planet explosion and is growing in power. But let's talk about those statue heads again. At this point, we've seen them cropping up in all kinds of locations, on the architecture of the cities, in caves where unspeakable acts were committed, and even watching over the birth of a new god. But why are they in the cities? Is it just an asset flip, or is there something more to it? Well, going back to Fallout Shelter Online, as we mentioned, you can collect those hero cards, and Lorenzo Cabot's has that strange statue on it. The headpiece is like all the other statue heads, apart from the glowing eyes. The fact it's so large and prominent behind Lorenzo implies, to me, that it's controlling him, or at the very least, where the power of the crown comes from. It also gives us confirmation the statue head came before human society. I mean, we found them ourselves in old ruins, and Lorenzo found them in an ancient city predating humanity. Then why are they so prevalent in modern infrastructure? The secret may be hidden in the heart of the deck. Blasphemous Act is a card from the Fallout Magic the Gathering collection. Now, other than just the way the cards work, some of the cards have flavor text written on them that includes lore. Now, Blasphemous Act states that everyone knew the bombs were coming. Everyone but the public. And wouldn't you know it, the artwork for this card shows what certainly looks like one of the statue heads. Now, we know some major families who are aware of the Eldritch secrets to the world, such as the Black Hall, Dunwich, and Whately families. Maybe the worship of old gods was more common among the higher-ups than anyone knew. Now, I admit this, but putting on the tinfoil hat for a moment, the combination of the statues and the bombs dropping could even imply that those who dropped the bombs were influenced by the old gods. I mean, we've seen people in positions of power, like that general, as well as the Dunwich, the Black Holes. Maybe they were trying to wake them up. They may have been intended to wake them up. For example, let's take a walk near Tanagra Town, over to the Big Moor. Now, this pit is just home to floaters nowadays, but at the center is the body of an unfortunate man who was sacrificed upon an altar by cultists. We can see some of the cultists' decorations scattered around the hull. This is definitely an important area for them. And a nearby note raises more mysteries, and it might actually give us the reason this area is special to the cultists. I don't know why I came to the Big Moor. I'd never considered why we called it that. As far back as I can remember, that's just what it was called. I remember family picnics here, and the older kids climbing down to swim in the summer. Now, though, there can be no question. I cannot say for certain which of the circumstances has caused it to open. I do know that I must go inside. Is it the smell? The sound? The warmth? Even as I write these last words, I am impatient to look back into the yawning abyss, the true Moor, the ancient namesake of Big Moor. So around the time the bombs dropped, the Moor opened to the true Moor. Not the Big Moor we have now, but the true gaping Moor. And at least one person during that time was beckoned within, maybe by the interloper who rests deep underground. There is one last thing here to look at, though. Hidden under the waters is the remains of, well, something. See, it looks like a whale, but the skeleton isn't quite right, and it's not the only place we find the bones of these creatures. In most of the cult locations, we can find them used as decorations, and they seem important to them. But Appalachia is inland, and there really shouldn't be a collection of whale bodies here. The Big Moor one could have surfaced when the Earth split, but all the other ones? There's so many of them. There's one even near the interloper, and we can even find one at Hopewell Cave, another interesting location. So in Hopewell Cave, once you fight past the bugs and the deathclaw that's nesting within, you can see the skeleton embedded in the wall, and a holotape nearby.
As my study of Hopewell Cave continues, I'm struck by the atypical nature of this Adena-based burial complex. The Adena culture generally buried their dead in large mounds and similar hill-shaped earthworks. Due to the primitive nature of the tools from 1000 to 200 BC, stone carving was not yet a part of their society. However, Archaeologists who investigated this Skull Cave site removed remains and artifacts belonging to the Adena culture. I wonder if it's possible that the remains of the Adena people were moved to this location well after their society ceased to exist. For one culture to treat another's with such reverence it's unusual, at best. I will continue my research to discover more.
Now, to touch on something a little more controversial, and this part isn't explicitly canon, as the Atom Shop might or might not be, it's a whole thing. The Forbidden Dig Site is an Atom Shop shelter, and its tagline is interesting. Beware where you dig in the Forbidden Dig Site. You never know what horrors can be found. Now, if you look around, it's mostly a dirt cavern, but in the center is a dig site, and half uncovered is the skeleton of one of the creatures. Was this the horror that they uncovered? I don't think a regular whale would honestly deserve that title. If we go back to Magic the Gathering, the Fetid Pools card shows one of these skeletons and has a bit more lore for us. Ask any of the old timers and they'll agree something ancient and terrifying haunts the seas. Which is actually a line taken from Fallout 4, where two caravan guards are discussing a great whale ghoul one of their grandfathers saw many years ago. But still, even if these creatures are from the ocean, how the hell are they so far inland? Appalachia is old. Far too old to have whale skeletons. Maybe an old raider might have an idea for us. You see, in the crater, you may have come across Munch, a surprisingly old raider, especially given his less than friendly personality. He does, however, take on a kind of important role as a kind of historian who teaches the raiders, although he admits that he embellishes his stories to spice things up and keep the kids interested, so bear that in mind as we read the next note. Scattered across his desk are some of the stories he tells people, and one of them is about the whales. Most of the kids here don't know the truth about whales. They used to be the largest, most feared land predators in North America. You always knew when they were coming because of the whale quakes. They'd wake from hibernation out of the ground and start burrowing their way to the surface. Once on land, they were a force of pure destruction. A single whale could take down a whole building if it was still in their way. They had razor-sharp fins to slice people in half and gruesome baleen for teeth. If they sucked you in, that baleen would slice you up like a loaf of bread. The kids found some old bones while digging out the core. I told them they were lucky, not only because it was dead, but because this one was just a baby. Not only does he claim that these creatures were capable of moving across land, which would explain how all the bodies are around here, but also that the ones we've seen are just babies, and that when they wake, they cause whale quakes. Maybe similar to what we encountered at the Dunwich Borers. There is one of the bodies to be found in the aquarium of the Atlantic that implies these aren't some mutation, but they were actually around before the bombs dropped, which does make sense with all the buried skeletons. Maybe these were some eldritch creature that roamed the lands of Appalachia. Going back to the burial site at Hopewell Cave, the archaeologist was confused because of the location of the tribe and how advanced their tools were. Maybe they were worshipping the creature and it was advancing them more rapidly before something happened. Maybe there is a society of giant whale creatures under the ground in Appalachia, and that's what was calling people to the Big Maw. Now, we also have another mysterious species to look at with the Overgrown. See, Atlantic City exists in a tentative state of peace between the Moonies, the Mafia, and the Shoreman, which we can influence in missions in the area. All of the factions have started to feel pressure as the Overgrown have exploded onto the scene. The plant folk have started to take over the city, encroaching from the nearby pine barrens. Even the municipal government's forestry division is beginning to really struggle with them. The actual origin of these creatures is unknown. We have two human-like specimens in the Elder and Fawn with bipedal forms and human-like faces, but the pollinators are more akin to floating squid that are even capable of healing the other Overgrown. Friedlane, one of the leaders in the Munies, has several theories about the origins of these plant people. Whether just a nuclear mutation, a zombie plant infection, or even a parasite that takes over hosts. Their DNA seems to be some combination of both plant and animal, although most of the theories, such as the zombie virus, don't really explain the floating tentacle monster that pollinators are. Now, we've seen plant creatures previously. The interloper is visually some kind of large plant humanoid. Maybe these overgrown are an alternate way for the old gods to spread out on the surface. Although maybe they are just more akin to Harold, a poor sap we could encounter through Fallouts 1, 2, and 3. He was mutated by the FEV virus, the Forced Evolutionary Virus, and somehow it allowed a plant he lovingly called Bob to take root in his head. Eventually, when we find him in Fallout 3, he's actually more plant than man, stuck stationary as Bob has put down his roots. As we're in Atlantic City, I'd also like to just give an honourable mention to the damn clown, who seems to be some kind of supernatural entity. On the boardwalk is a nondescript shack, but upon lockpicking the door, we can find a gruesome sight. A rib cage with a clown chest bursting out of it is in the corner, and there's a little shrine to a disturbing clown photo. Someone has placed some eyes on the table in front of it, and scrolled across the wall is "He is seen." If for some reason we want the clown picture and take it, our vision becomes distorted. The door slams shut, and now we be cursed and hunted. Good job. Across the map, multiple clowns will now spawn, watching us, like we're being hunted by the killer that created the shrine, or the entity the shrine was dedicated to. This isn't the only shrine to this being we can find. At the ball is a mannequin with human's eyes, a clown hat, and a hatchet with "He see" written on the wall. And there is also a woman mannequin with several buckets on her head. When we finally remove them all, she also has human eyes, and on the wall is "She see." This could all have a connection to Pickman's paintings. A lot of those focus on eyes and have some horrific imageries, but if there's interest, I could do more of a paranormal events in Fallout video, including all the supernatural events in the games. In Shenandoah Park, you may have come across the Mole, a rather interesting guy who will attack on sight. The Mole mask and a straitjacket, and maybe tied to some mysterious murders around the map that have propaganda from Mo just kind of scattered across all the areas. But if we check the game files, we can actually find some notes that didn't make it into the game. So of course, with all the content like this, canonicity is questionable, but they're pretty interesting. Break the rules and die. Break the rules and die. Mo must protect the park. Mo must protect the park. Mo must endure. Mo digs safety. Appalachian blood makes the trees grow, grow, grow. The other voices grow louder and louder. It won't let me go. I can't stop it. You don't want to stop it. I feel it taking over as I write, and it feels so good. I won't be me anymore. You will be better. Now, maybe the Mole is just an escaped inmate, but the mention of voices and needing to grow the trees with blood after everything we've discovered so far, it definitely makes you think whether there was something more to this character's insanity. There are a lot. The supernatural is definitely canon in the Fallout universe. Finally, just as an honorable mention, that may or may not matter. Way back in Interplace Fallout 1, the children of the cathedral worshipped a dark god of war, before they began worshipping the Master as the same thing. It's never explained who this dark god was. Maybe it was an Eldritch entity, maybe it was just a sect going crazy in the wasteland. Might be related, might not. There's not a whole lot of information on that part. And that is pretty much it around everything around Eldritch entities and qualtoth. As I said, there's still more supernatural stuff we could go into, but we've been through Fallout 3, 4, and 76. We've mentioned Fallout 1, searching for every connection we could find, and what we found may actually have dire repercussions for the future. It certainly seems that the bombs dropping stirred the great old things, as they seem to be a lot more active around when the bombs dropped, but they're still active 200 years later. Maybe they're just waking up. I mean, what's 200 years to an entity that's lasted eons? Maybe that's what's going on in the Organ Cave. It's a huge cave system inhabited by the cult of the Mothman. The water within is red, and the only explanation is this note. Whoever finds this, my name was Cyrus Kingdom. I was a student of geology at VTU, investigating local stories of folks pulling blood-red groundwater. I found some old surveys in Charleston calling it the Organ Cave, supposedly named after a stone fixture that resembles a pipe organ. The stories were right though. Blood-red water. Couldn't be nothing more than the water lingering on top of a large iron ore vein, then making its way to the groundwater, I figured. I still couldn't shake off the feeling that it was a bad omen. Maybe I should have listened to my gut on this one. While mapping this cave out, I felt the earth shake around me, and next thing I know, I'm trapped in a cave-in. Earthquake? The world ending? Doubt I'll ever know. If I'm ever found after I'm gone, I want my remains to be buried near home. Don't leave me in this hellish place. Love you, Ma. Love you, Pa. Maybe the cult knows something we don't, and the water is from something else. And I couldn't end this without mentioning one final reference. In Atlantic City, next to a messenger's corpse, you can find the following message. Urgent message for R. Dunwich and C. Blackhole. Nate knows too much. His followers are growing and his word is convincing. Although most everything they're saying is speculation, a lot of it is based in collected facts. It's a good thing this information didn't get out before the war. The followers could be converted if they're not too dangerous. They could serve our cause well. Looks like the Dunwich and Blackhole families may have plans at Atlantic City in the future. It's also a reference to a rather big creator in the Fallout lore community, Epic Nate, who I highly recommend if you did enjoy this video. This was a lot of fun for me. I'm a big Fallout fan, so digging into the Lovecraftian lore was great for me. And I genuinely still remember when I first encountered the Dunwich building as a kid, and it scared the hell out of me. So it was nice to just kind of compile everything that's happened since. Let me know if you have any theories down below as well, so we can look into them together. Let me know if you do want me to do a supernatural or a cryptid collection for Fallout. I would be interested in both of those. There's quite a few. I think there's quite a few cryptids that aren't quite as well known in the community, or for people who aren't super into the community, such as like the Smiling Man. So that could be quite interesting. And honestly, don't forget the Discord that you can go to down below. I would love to have more people to just talk about lore with. But that was it for this one. I will see you all in the next one.